Hello and welcome to Beyond the Slipstream. I'm Matt and I'm here with my brother Justin. And on today's show, we're continuing our conversation about mountaineering movies coming on the heels of Netflix's recent spectacle of spectacular Skyscraper Live, starring the unstoppable Alex Honnold, who made a first ascent of the iconic Taipei 101 skyscraper look like a casual day at the climbing gym. Honnold will no doubt feature in this conversation as well. I mean, honestly, has there been a climbing or mountaineering conversation anywhere in the world in the last 10 years that didn't include him? We'll also spend a fair bit of time on another notable mountaineering Alex as we dig into more films from this compelling subgenre. Justin, let's get climbing, shall we?
We shall.
Yeah, so you were quite adamant about me catching up with this movie Torn, which I did. I had not seen it before. The storyline seemed very familiar to me, and I think it's because I knew a little bit about one of the protagonists of this film, documentary film, I should say. So we can start there. I also watched from your list the Arctic Ascent with Alex Honnold, which I would love to talk about. There's plenty to get into there. Beyond that, I don't know if you caught up with any of the ones that I had seen, but I know I'm pretty sure you said you saw the Dawn Wall.
Watch the Dawn Wall.
So we could talk about that one.
Lost on Everest. I watched
Did you get a chance to
The Devil's Climb, which was
Devil's
really
Climb?
good. Yes.
Yeah, I want to talk about that one as well. Did you catch up with Valley Uprising?
I started it, didn't get to finish it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so Torn is like part two. Okay, so
what do you mean part two?
For me, so one of the things that I watched when I started, so obviously, like, I was down this rabbit hole, so I was going like from here to here to here to here to here to here to here, and it, for me, I went from the Alpinist to Maru, all right, which was still following along with, like, Jimmy Chin is like the through line in a lot of this stuff, which is really interesting. The filmmaker, now, photographer.
Meru, if I recall correctly, I watched this a long time ago, but it's about Conrad Anker and two other guys, right?
Correct.
Okay, and who are the two other guys?
It's Renan Ozdirk and Jimmy Chin are the other two guys.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so.
And Chin, it should be noted, is not only a mountaineer, but like a filmmaker. Like
he's a filmmaker, he's a photographer.
A lot of time behind the camera.
Yes. So we go to Maru, and Maru is about them, climbing this other peak in the Indian Himalayas that is extremely hard. And one of the reasons it's really hard is because there's no Sherpa situation there. It's not like Everest. That leads me then to Everest, and like, okay, I think we're all pretty familiar with like Everest and how it works, or at least you think you do. And what was interesting about it for me is that I guess I just didn't really understand the history of it. So I really got wrapped up in learning like the history of Irvin and Mallory's ascent, and then Hillary and I can't think of what his Sherpa's name is.
Tenzing Norgay, but we got into this last week.
Yeah. So that led me to The Wildest Dream. All right. And The Wildest Dream is where Conrad Anker was retracing Mallory's first ascent using, period correct equipment. All right. And things like that. So that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Period correct equipment.
Yes.
Is there a documentary film about that?
Yeah. It's called The Wildest Dream.
And you see him out there with the period equipment?
Yes, you can.
Wow.
And Jimmy Chin is the camera guy. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now
they must have had a support team with them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, and it's all about, can Anker make it up the second step? All right, and using this equipment, because it's nobody knows whether or not Mallory and Irvine actually made it to the top. The last they were seen, they were like 800 feet away. All right. And so the speculation is that they made it and that they died on their descent. It sounds like they, to all things considered, they fell. All right. Um, Now, once Conrad Anker is who found Mallory's body, okay,
Yeah, I love this detail.
in 1999. Okay. Later that year, all right, he was going on this skiing trip where they were going to ski down this mountain, and that is where Alex Lowe lost his life. All right, so same year that he finds Mallory's body, that's like April, May, September. He goes on this trip, and him and Alex Lowe are going to attempt to like ski down this, big, essentially, you know, gully, that's between these two peaks, and that's where Alex Lowe ends up losing his life. All right, now in a completely like wild thing, all right, that also pops up while you're doing this. So Conrad Anker, who's connected to Jimmy Chin, all right, through all these movies, all right, so Conrad Anker finds Mallory in 1999. Jimmy Chin finds Irvine's foot in 2024.
Yeah, it's crazy. And these guys, they had their names like all sort of like sewn into their clothing and stuff like that. So they're
Yes.
very easily identifiable, by on purpose because they know they can die up there. Um, and it's wild. Those photos you put in there are wild. I'm also watching the trailer for this movie, and it's the wildest dream, and I'm so ready to uh to check this thing out.
It's a super great rabbit hole to fall down. So that being said,
Well, let me make one point too about that falling down that rabbit hole, which sort of goes the reason why every one of these things is so compelling. There's one giant reason at the center of why all of these things are so compelling, and it spins out in any number of ways. And that reason is that the chance of death is always
the
always
consequence.
hanging over your shoulder
Yes.
in these types of environments, doing these types of activities. It does not matter how good you are, how prepared you are, how lucky you are. These environments, you put yourself up there, and they will take you out.
And
Nobody can outsmart um, an avalanche.
yeah, Mother Nature. Which is why when I came across Torn, all right, now this all wraps back around to Torn, why I felt it was so important to watch this. Because after digesting, you know, I don't know, 15 hours of like all this, like, hoorah, hoorah, we made it to the mountaintop, all of this stuff, you realize, because they're always telling you, it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous. We're in the death zone, all this stuff. What's the cost when the worst happens? And so, you know, Conrad and Alex Lowe go on this skiing trip,
Well, hold on,
and
hold on, hold on, hold on. You gotta back it up
sure,
a little bit.
go ahead.
First of all, um, shoot, I lost my train of thought. We should mention that number one, we're spoiling these movies.
Oh yeah,
Um, this thing can be a very tough watch in a number of ways. It also dovetails very nicely into the conversation we were having last week when we get into some of the larger themes and the moral questions that are raised by these types of films in some way. I mean, some of them the moral questions are a little bit less a part of the consideration. But in this one, especially in Skyscraper Live, especially, um, the moral questions are pretty big, and it's interesting to juxtapose those with the questions that you get from the movie The Alpinist, as we discussed a little bit last week. So, that being the case, the background on this guy is that he was one of the two or three best rock climbing mountaineers in the world. He could do the very athletic kind of like rock climbing, guy in a pair of shoes, and a pair of shorts on a wall, but he could also do like ice climbing and, big mountaineering and, first ascents of, massive peaks and all that kind of stuff. He was into it all. He was, a complete picture mountaineer. Um, and
These guys were all about pushing the envelope of what was next.
Right. But he also seemed that he was just a very, very nice guy and a real people person. And he meets and falls in love with his wife, and whose name is Jenny. And they have three kids. And, from looking from the outside looking at it, he seems like, the ultimate dad, just like totally engaged with his kids, really in love with his kids. And yet, and this is how it dovetails into
Yeah.
like watching that Skyscraper live with Alex Honnold when they, cut away to these like pre-recorded segments of him hanging out with the wife and kids at home. Like, you're making a huge risk.
Yeah.
And there are real life ramifications to the worst happening.
Well, and it's interesting how understanding Jenny is of, it's the calling that these guys have. You know what I mean? They have something built into their DNA that calls them to do these things. You know what I mean? And they know that like you could break the Bronco or whatever, but like you never really that's you know what I mean. It's no matter what you do, like they're always going to feel the call of the mountain.
Mhm.
And
Mhm. And I feel like in most cases, if you take like if our subset here is Marc Andre Leclerc and his lady, Alex Honnold and his wife, and Mark what's his last name? Or excuse me,
low,
Alex Lowe and his wife, Jenny, um, as our group that we're looking at here. I mean, with Marc Andre Leclerc, his girl was like a climber with him. She did a lot of these things with him,
yes,
She was a full-blown climber. She, had absolutely like zero, she's complicit. You know what I'm saying? Like she has made her devil's bargain, knowing full well she could die just as easily as he could die, and 100% what the stakes are,
yes,
right? Um, and that's why we see at the end of that movie her moving on, and she's still out there and doing it because in a way she has that same thing inside of her that these
yes,
types of guys. You take Alex Honnold and his wife. It doesn't seem like his wife is really a climber or like part of that sport. She is a case where she has just made a very conscientious decision because she knew who he was before she ever married him or got involved with him. You know what I'm saying? He
correct.
had already done free solo. He had already risked his life hundreds of times, very purposefully risked his life. And he was somehow able to convince her, she has somehow come to believe that, she will be able to deal with it if, he dies.
Yeah,
You know, I, this goes back to what we were saying last week about this being about them having a mindset that seems a lot more sort of primordial than the modern fear riddled mindset that most of us have.
yes, totally agree. And so,
And then you bring in Alex Lowe,
yeah,
and his significant other was, I feel like she was kind of somewhere in between. She wasn't quite doing the stuff that Alex was doing, but they had christened their relationship upon the altar of adventure.
yes,
They spent a number of years before they had kids and stuff, traveling around and being wild and stuff like that. So she had a good idea of who this guy was and what the consequences were, and probably sort of understood his lust for adventure a little bit closer the way Marc Andre Leclerc's girlfriend probably understood it.
and I think that she had, self-admittedly, in her younger days, put him a bit on a pedestal that like he's always going to come he's like, yeah, it's dangerous, but he's going to come out of it just fine. You know what I mean? Like she had kind of like sold herself on that lie, that you know people are going to die, but it's not going to be him.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you get to this situation where, I mean, it's utterly heartbreaking. You know, these guys go on this trip and they get caught.
Interestingly, it was the same as in the Alpinist, where Marc-Andre Leclerc went away with like one other dude that wasn't really like a part of any storylines until that time. The same thing happened with Mark Lowe. He was like up there with some other dude that, was part of the climbing world, but we really hadn't heard much about him prior to that in the film. And then he was away just doing another adventure. And
And well, he was so him and Conrad Anker were best friends. They were, these are guys that they did things separately, like, when he found Mallory in '99, he wasn't with Alex Lowe. All right, Alex
Mhm,
wasn't
mhm.
there for that.
Yeah, Conrad Anker is like one of the
Right,
two or three like biggest names in mountaineering and
right,
climbing over the past like 30 years, I'd say. He's getting up there in years now, but this man has done a lot of historic things. I mean, we
yeah,
just talked about one, that Wildest Dream movie,
right.
and
And they ascended, I think, in '96 together, and so they did a couple of things together. But they wanted to make this essentially like skiing down Everest, movie, which people have done, but they wanted to do this other. They picked a different mountain that was more conducive to skiing.
Mhm.
However, there was a much more inherent danger of avalanche because it's after the summer season. So like this is moving into the fall. So there's a higher risk of there being a problem, but again, they're weighing the risk versus the reward, and what ends up happening is him, you know, Alex and Conrad and whoever their camera guy was end up getting caught in this avalanche, and you know, Alex and the cameraman end up losing their life, which is and it's super crazy because Conrad, who's also in the same avalanche and should have lost his life, miraculously comes out of it and just, shows up at the base camp like, beat up, bloodied, and
Was this covered in a different movie?
it may have been touched on in something else that I watched, but that's because I wasn't unfamiliar with it when they brought it up in Torn. But you know, here this guy just comes out of this avalanche.
Because I missed that in watching Torn, that Anker had been on the mountain with him.
Yes, they were together, which is the really the toughest part about it. So you know they do make an effort to search for him, but they realize pretty quickly it's futile. They don't have any really way to pinpoint where they are, whether or not they could have gone into a crevasse. They just don't know. You know what I mean? And it's
Right.
they can't search forever. They try to find them, they don't find them, and so the heartbreaking worst call ever is Conrad, you know, or whoever it was. I can't remember if it was Conrad that called her,
So I
but
think it was Conrad that had to call Jenny and
yeah,
break the news. Um,
and
here's where this film diverges, where the big curveball in this film um, comes in. Before we get to it, though, weigh in. What is your? Do you have an opinion as to the moral implications of guys who are fathers of young children willingly engaging in behaviors that are this high risk?
yeah, I do, but I have a very strong opinion because in 2024, um, it's ironic the parallels in my own life, but I had a very good friend, Roy Giddings, the guy that I bought this house off of, who rode motorcycles, and it was he was an avid motorcycle rider, and he had a Harley Davidson, and his bike had what was described to me as a death wobble, and he lost control of his bike on a Pennsylvania back road and ended up going head on with a minivan and losing his life back in October 2024. you know
Yeah. Well, I kind of have a problem with it too. Like I feel like, you know, there have to be other ways that they can find to scratch that itch, or they have to be willing to say, no, that's as strong as that urge is in me, I have to I have to deny that urge because there are greater things at stake. And, it's it just really smacks of narcissism, to me.
Yes,
Incredibly
and the
narcissistic.
feeling like you're invincible when you're clearly not, and especially with these situations with like the with the mountaineering, and it's like I think it's like 1 in 4 people
Well,
that go
yeah.
up Everest are gonna
And
die.
and you can't help, especially me sitting here watching this at this point in time and having, what we talked about last week and what I've consumed in the past week. I can't sit there and watch this and not think, when will we get the Alex Honnold film like this? Like, when are we going to get the Alex Honnold version? It's going to be, or sooner or later
Right.
we'll see the Alex Honnold, greatest hits or whatever. And it just it's it's wild. It's just wild that people are willing to do it. But again, this is what makes it so damn compelling, so
Exactly.
interesting. Of course, there's other stuff about it that's
Now,
very interesting as well. So you want to
now,
get into the
once
big.
once Conrad, gets home, so now Jenny has lost her husband, the father of her children, and Conrad has lost his best friend, and
And the boys have lost their father.
yeah, and the boys have lost
The
their
the
father.
three sons who are by the way the filmmakers of this movie.
Well, the oldest
So
son
yeah,
is Max, is the one that is directing the movie.
yeah.
So what you find out, and I had already known, though I'd already known that Conrad had ended up getting together with Jenny, but what you find out is, in their grief, um, Conrad and Jenny ended up falling in love, and Conrad ended up you know adopting two of uh, two of Alex's sons and raising them.
Yeah, well, they came under a little bit of fire, at least, or some criticism, because it happened very fast. Like within 3 months
Hmm.
of
Yes.
Alex's death, they were starting to get together.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, they were
he
they were realizing that they had feelings. That love was blossoming inside of this tragedy.
Right. And it kind of makes sense in a lot of ways because they were bound together by this grief, that they both had. I mean, in a way, they were both married to that guy, you know what I mean? Because like Conrad Anker would go into the backcountry with this guy for weeks at a time and
Hmm.
just be like one on one with this dude. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like they spent many a night, slept together in a tent and, knew each other easily as well as he knew his wife. Um, and
Now,
so they have a shared grief, and they go to Disneyland shortly after. Um, and Conrad goes with them, and he says specifically, he's like, I know that Alex would have wanted me to help out with his sons, to try to help them in their rehabilitation, to show them a little joy and fun in their life, and that's why he took them. And that trip was part of the reason why they kind of started falling in love with
mhm.
each other, as I understand it.
Well, and then, as if the parallels in my own life weren't enough, a few months ago we found out that my friend Rory's widow and his best friend that he went on motorcycle trips, you know, for years with, is marrying his widow.
There you
And
go.
it's like, and I said, and this is before I knew any of this story, my opinion was like, I don't fault them in any way, because I don't know if I'd be able to understand what losing, my best friend, and his wife losing her best friend and husband, and what that does to you. Like, I can't, like, so I
Yeah.
didn't fault them. There's a lot of people that gave them a lot of shit for it, and I wasn't one of them. And, the heart wants what the heart wants. And I don't think that we give enough space for things like that to exist. We just think of it as, this like, how could you do that to that person? It's like, well, that person made a goddamn decision to
Yeah.
do something dangerous.
I mean, if we had evidence of Anker going after her before Alex was dead, then yeah, it might be a little bit more problematic. But they're two people united by grief. They're entitled to find love in the wake of tragedy. And,
Yeah.
you know, the fact of the matter is, Alex took a great big risk. He did it every time he went up those mountains, and he left his family without a husband, without a father, due to his own narcissism and his own selfish needs. And those kids needed a dad, and I think as we saw by the end of the movie, that's who they got in Conrad Anker. I mean, he
Yeah.
stepped
I mean,
in,
it
he
was,
stepped in, and he had to put his ego aside. A lot of guys, they don't want to raise some other guy's kids or whatever. There's none of that kind of, stupid, patriarchal posturing or anything like that. He stepped in there and said, "I will be a dad to these guys in whatever way that I can, and I'll be a husband to this woman." And I don't know how much huge risk Anker continued taking.
well, I mean, he climbed Everest again in 2000, whatever, because he used the period piece equipment. So again, but she says it. She says that, after a while, he started hearing the call again. And, but I think that she probably more than anybody in the world has a much better understanding of what that call is and what it means. And, whether or not he's still taking as risks, but I mean, shit, if you're ascending Everest, you're taking a risk one way or the other. So, but it's the part that I found so compelling about this particular movie was when he was asked. I mean, Max asks them the toughest questions.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, the questions that he asked them were just unreal. And the way that it all comes together in the end, like you said, is just, oh my God, it was so utterly powerful. But it just goes to show you that, like, to live this life, this is the inherent risk of this life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really wild. A few notes on just like the filmmaking. I thought there was an incredible moment in the movie where we've had the romance and the love between Conrad and Jenny happen, and they get married, and he's assimilated into family life, and then the idea of recovering Alex's body is introduced, and the way they
Oh
introduce it
yeah,
is
this too.
so good. They cut to this guy David Gettler, who's like just a rando like mountain climber, um,
That they
and
know. I mean, they
yeah, I
know
mean,
him.
he's
Yeah,
I'm saying he's part of the climbing world, but he's random at least in terms like we haven't heard his name yet in this movie, but
correct.
he he's um he's out there climbing, and he basically finds Alex's body. But the way they intro it is he gives this really great detail. They show a big like panoramic shot of mountains, and he says, when you're in these areas, like you look out on the mountains, and he goes, and it's all gray and white and black and brown, and he goes, but every so often you'll see like a tiny dot of color, and that's how you denote the presence of humanity in a spot, because everything else is one of four colors.
Right.
You know what I mean? um and and that's basically how he found Alex's body. He spotted a spot of color and went to it to see what it was because it wasn't moving, and he found Alex, and he alerted Conrad, um, and they hatched a plan to go and take the bodies down and give them uh, a proper burial or whatever, a proper funeral. And
A pyre, man. Like,
yeah,
how
and it's
crazy is
just it's
that?
just so cool. The fact that they wanted to do this, the fact that they were able to do this, the fact that, a guy like Conrad Anker uh has lived a life that's just been in front of the cameras. So everything is being documented, all along the way for this film. There's tons of footage of everybody all the time, everywhere. I mean, even places where they would insert like a family photo in many cases in this movie, you got like a little video roll of that moment as well. Like somebody was also rolling video when they were taking this family picture, um, because they're just assimilated to constantly, rolling tape. Um, there's a beautiful shot as they're hiking in to get to like their sort of base camp area for the retrieval of the bodies, where they're walking across this sort of like patch of kind of greenish tundra with like the mountains rising in the background. And they give you a quick cut to Alex like 20 years before that, walking through that same area and kind of having that same sort of look on his face of like, wow, I'm overwhelmed with the beauty here. And then it cuts right back to the other guys. And I'm like, damn, that was sweet. That was a beautiful little edit right there. A lot of
Well,
beautiful filmmaking on display here.
the 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 scene where she's talking about his wedding ring. Uh
Not well, that whole scene, not only his wedding ring, but when she also just talks about like how he was found with his head like tucked down, which means he probably was alive after he got buried, realizing that he was slowly going to suffocate, and like what a horrible death that must have
yeah.
been.
But then she was talking about how she when she touched his hand, how it was smaller and it had always been bigger. Oh God, it was I mean, it's just so beautiful and painful and just yeah, it is. It is something. I did watch another movie that was made 2 years later, which is the story of Spencer Matthews trying to bring his brother Michael home off of Everest, and they thought that they found him, but it wasn't confirmed. So they actually went to go to see if it was him. It turned out it wasn't him, but they had spent all this money and resources, and they ended up bringing a Sherpa that had died the year before down so that he could be buried by his family. So they like rather than waste all these resources, they ended up bringing somebody else down when they couldn't find their target. Which
Interesting.
yeah, it's just really really crazy, man. Really just the cost of things. Yeah. Sorry, it's really really heavy stuff.
Yeah, no, it was very heavy. It's beautiful though how it worked out that um they were able to complete this very proper, fitting end, that everybody seemed to be able to get some closure from this thing that, in a way, it's Conrad Anker closing the circle on his commitment to his friend and to his friend's family. You know what I mean? Like it's like he did the whole thing. He stepped in, he cared for his friend's wife, he cared for his friend's children, he kept his friend's memory alive, and in the end he went and he retrieved his friend's body, and he gave him a proper burial. Um, so I think that Conrad Anker comes off pretty admirable
Hmm.
in this film.
Very much so. And like I said, his kid, well, his adoptive son Max, in the end, more or less says the same. He said, and they were like, and it's really crazy because they refer to Conrad as dad, and they refer to Alex as Alex. Like the whole all through it. Um, so personally, I think we should take a break. Couple of
Yeah.
things that, and then what I'd like to do is maybe flip over and let's talk the Dawn Wall, the Devil's Climb, and Arctic Ascent because those all have to do with Alex and Tommy more or less.
Yeah, yeah, that
Um,
sounds good.
Tommy Caldwell. So, but a couple of things if you are listening and you're interested in falling down the rabbit hole, a couple of the ones that there's so much stuff that you can see, but there are there are a couple of really, really great Everest movies. Obviously, The Wildest Dream is really, really good. Um, other than that, there is the Everest, the 1998 IMAX movie Everest that was like played in all the IMAX, like official
I
IMAX
saw it. I
theaters.
remember. I remember seeing that in
Yeah.
IMAX.
There's also the Conquest of Everest and the Epic of Everest. These are These are the Conquest. This is real footage from the actual 1953 ascent by Hillary and Norgay, and then Epic of Everest is real footage from the 1994 or 1924 attempt to summit by Mallory and Irvine. Then I also watched Everest, the 2015 Jake Gyllenhaal dramatization about the 96 blizzard disaster on Mount Everest that is the same story as Into Thin Air, because John
Yeah,
Krakauer was actually
with Beck Weathers.
yes, with Beck Weathers. Yes, you got it correctly. Um, and then there's another good one about Mallory and Irvine called Lost on Everest from 2020. So if you want to deep dive on Mount Everest, those are some really, really good ones to dig into, because it is really, really compelling stuff.
Yeah, we can include links to the trailers to these films in the show notes as well, and I'm also going to conclude a link. I'll make one more mention before we take a break here. A link to a video called "Walking a Cliff as a Mountain Goat." I don't know if you've ever seen some of the more extreme pictures of mountain goats and the sides of hills that they are able to stand on, but it seems almost impossible. And like
Yes.
this video that you will link to will take that even one step further. I mean, it's at the bottom of my notes after Arctic Ascent with Alex Honnold, if you want to take a quick look at that, Justin,
I will. I will do that.
because what they've done is they've strapped a camera to a mountain goat who's out there in the giant rock walls. And when you see some of the stuff that these mountain goats go on, it's wild. It's so wild.
What? What?
The distance that they're leaping is just nuts. I mean,
What?
they jump off of like 20-foot cliffs. Their bodies are just like so perfectly like proportioned and constructed to manage this kind of stuff. Their hooves come to like little claw points basically. It's like their each of their four hooves is like a climbing shoe. It's totally insane. So do check out that video,
What
walking
is
a cliff
going
as a mountain.
on?
All right, we're going to leave it there. Stick with us. We're going to be back. We're going to talk about a great trio of films that work well together. That's The Dawn Wall, The Devil's Climb, and Arctic Ascent. Stay with us. Don't miss the Team Bus, our weekly podcast about pro cycling, and oh, did I mention pro cycling? We're kind of obsessed. Dropping into your usual podcast feeds every Wednesday. All right, we are back, and we're going to get into a trio of films now, all of which I think are meritorious and worthy of discussion. Two of them fall into kind of a formula I've noticed in some of these types of adventure type films, because of the ease of recording and shooting these things in the modern era, where cameras have gotten, so much smaller and lighter and easier to manage, and just, you can take a camera anywhere you want to go, and it's real easy and real simple. It doesn't cost a whole lot. So for folks out there doing amazing things, why not? Why not bring a crew of people with you and shoot this stuff? And so, you can go into it with a straight like, hey, here's the footage of my climb kind of thing, or my adventure. Or you can kind of take it up a little extra level by inserting a B story into your film. And that's what they do, at least in Arctic Ascent and in the Devil's, what is it called? The Devil's
The
Climb.
Devil's Climb and the Dawn Wall. They all have
Yeah. I mean, the Dawn Wall is a little bit different of a structure, because it started out with a focus on this climb, but the B story is as the A story by the end of the movie. So that's why I see it a little bit differently. But it does in a way fall into that pattern as well. So which one do you think would be best to start on?
I
I
don't
think
know.
we take Dawn Wall last.
Okay, then I would say probably the Arctic Ascent, because I don't know,
Yeah,
it's
that's
Alex, but it's not Alex and Tommy. So maybe we'll do that one first, and then we'll do the other two, because they're
yeah,
both.
that's actually
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. So Arctic Ascent, this is basically a doc about documenting a trip that Alex took with a crew of folks, some filmmakers and some scientists,
Yes.
interestingly, and one just another climber, to go and uh, climb a iconic wall in Greenland that has never been climbed. So they want to put up a first ascent. It's in a super remote area. Um, and so they're going to have an adventure just getting to it. And then once they get there, they're going to climb up it. But he's got a meteor, no, not a meteorologist, what is she? A
A climate
geologist
and a
or
climatologist, I
yeah,
believe.
climatologist, with him. Um, and they are doing exploration. They are taking core samples from glaciers and from rocks and stuff like that. Um, and it's got this other element to it. You know what I mean? Um, and so we get to see a couple of cool things before they ever even get to this big final climb at the end. Number one, the sequence where they descend into the glacier. Totally nuts. I mean, they are looking down
Oh,
this crevasse that just seems bottomless, and they hook up and down they go. And I mean, he is down there at the very bottom of this thing. He's got to be 60 feet down inside of this glacier with just a couple of feet of ice above him, like, a couple of feet separating the, 60 feet of ice above him. And there is like massive runoff coming in there, creating this waterfall effect. So it's like loud and it's just loud and scary and surreal. The whole thing is just crazy,
yeah.
crazy. Glaciologist is what that lady is. She's a glaciologist. Her name is it's I got it in here somewhere. Heidi, the glaciologist. Um, he's out there with this other climber named Hazel Findlay, uh, and she's not as experienced as he is. She's more of a more on the mountaineering side than the like free climbing
Hmm.
side. And there's a great sequence where they're practicing like on a big boulder. They're bouldering out there, and they show her trying to get up it, and like she's looking pretty good at first, and then all of a sudden she falls off, and Alex like halfway catches her as she falls off. I mean, they're all, it's a 5 foot drop or whatever, but then they show Alex on there, and he's just like ding 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 ding, like just I mean the level. Seeing him go after somebody like that, who by any other measure would just be at the top of climbing, and he's just blowing past her like it's nothing. It's crazy.
Yes.
So they the fact that they're not free soloing in this movie is kind of nice, like the free solo aspect of some of this Alex Honnold stuff is just so damn scary. So at least they're all clipped in and taking safety precautions and stuff. But ultimately I think they do a bunch of trekking,
Hmm.
and then
Because
they
they can't just like fly into where they're going. They have to kind of like trek to it.
right, they want to hit a destination point. So ostensibly, the first half of the movie is dedicated to grabbing the glacial samples that Heidi needs. Uh, but to get out of there and to meet up with their ride, because they end up getting a boat ride to basically where the big wall is that he wants to climb. They first have to climb this other thing, and the whole crew comes up this climb. It's kind of cool. Like you see Heidi kind of just like, all right, I'm just not going to look down from here on out because I think that would be real bad. And I mean, they all go up this big wall, and you get to see Alex functioning as like a guide,
Hmm.
as the seasoned professional helping his team, conquer this thing. So that aspect of it is really cool. I was surprised that there was a boat waiting for him on the other side. I was like, oh, they get to hop in a boat and roll on up there, but that's their support crew. So it should also be said that both in the sequence where the whole team is going up the wall, and then in the sequence at the end where they go up the wall, um, the photography absolutely stunning.
Yeah, I
Just
mean, this is a National Geographic doc, and and it's framed in the vein of you know showing climate change and what the effects are, and how we're losing these glaciers and in the glacial ice, and
right.
so
And then it's like, but also Alex and
Yeah,
Hazel
but
are going
also
to
we're
put
gonna
up
do
a
this
first
badass
going to
thing.
put up a first
Yeah.
ascent of a climb that is like an Empire State Building taller than El Capitan. It's
Yes.
like ridiculous how big this thing is. And honestly, when they get to this thing, I mean, it looks like something out of the Lord of the Rings or something. I mean, it
All of
like
it
goes
looks like
up.
something out of the Lord of the Rings. It's freaking crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, this particular wall though, it's just got a shape to it. It's like it goes up like all the rest of the mountains around it, but then it's got this piece just jutting out of the top straight up that is also canted at a crazy angle. And I mean, it looks like a giant fang sticking up out of the ground or something like that. I mean, it's cartoonish almost. You're looking at this thing, and they're down there just like, good Lord Almighty, what are we getting ourselves into? Uh, but off they go, and it's Alex Honnold, and it doesn't matter what it is that you put in front of that guy. He's going up it like he can't be stopped. There's no wall that can stop that guy.
Yes, it's 100%. Like he I don't know. He's amazing with what he his abilities are. Like I mean, he can do things that I don't understand how they're possible. But
And you know what? Heidi holds her own too.
oh yeah, very much
I mean
so.
Hazel, excuse me, Hazel absolutely holds her own. She's contributing totally. How about one thing I forgot to mention in the first climb, the falling icicles. And Alex took a shot to the nose by a very small piece of icicle, but he makes the point that like icicles way better than rocks. If that had been a rock that hit me in the nose, I'd be going down off this mountain right now. Like I'd probably have a broken nose and or worse. So
I
like,
wonder why that is.
why what is?
Wonder why. I mean, it seems to me like falling ice is just like a falling rock.
Because it's lighter.
Oh
It's way
yeah,
lighter.
I guess it would be
The
later.
difference between getting hit by a piece of
Density.
ice this big and a piece of rock that big is
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, number
density.
one, it's not going to accelerate as fast, so it's going to be going slower when it hits you,
Yeah.
and it's not going to hit. It's going to hit you with less force. Can still fuck you up. I mean, 100%. You know, it just depends on the size and the what the speed and everything. So, anyways, um, yeah. So that was crazy. That also back on the photography, like the ride up the fjord was just
Hmm.
amazing. And it was interesting how Alex was seeing all this beauty and Heidi's just looking at it like, this is trouble. It shouldn't be this melty. There's way too many icebergs out here, you know?
Which is
Um,
it's interesting how your knowledge affects your view.
yeah, yeah. And how National Geographic is very keen on working both the A plot and the B plot of this movie. You know, this environmental messagey B plot is kept present
Hmm.
throughout the
Hmm.
film,
Hmm.
and as we'll see at the end, they really tie it up nicely with a bow at the end. So, no big surprise here. They make it to the top of
Of
the thing,
course.
and I didn't even write down the name of the climb. I should have written it down. It had some crazy
Yeah, I
Native
didn't write it
American
down
name.
either.
But
This was one of the first things that I watched. Like this was like way early in my watching. I definitely was on this before anything else.
Oh, okay. Well, I wanted to call out one shot before we move on from the end of it, and I felt like they did this a couple of times in The Alpinist, where you've got a super wide shot from a helicopter or something on a mountain, and it's slowly zooming in, and it takes you a long time, but finally you pick out the climber somewhere there on the wall, and in this case, it was both Hazel and Alex on the wall, and like you see Hazel first, and then you catch Alex down below because she's like in blue or something like that. But Alex is in his typical red and black, and he's blending in just a little bit better. And it's just like, oh my God, like that thing is enormous, like just
Way
wild,
different scales. Yeah.
totally wild. Um, But yeah, they make it to the top. They put in a first ascent, and we get a happy ending to this thing because after all is said and done, they're back on the boat and they've done a bunch of measurements and readings. And Heidi lets us know, you know what, this this melt off isn't occurring as fast as we thought, based on some of the stuff that we've turned up with our evidence. We feel a little hopeful that at least this particular glacier is okay for the time being. But I mean, I've heard a lot of that in the past like 4 or 5 years, not from the climate change isn't real people, but from the, we're doing actual science here. And like all of the emissions and everything have really been like curtailed in a
Hmm.
lot of way. Auto emissions, manufacturing emissions and stuff. We've gotten way, way, way better at not dumping stuff into the environment. The ozone hole is, repairing itself and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't say it's super surprising to hear her make that finding, but it was nice that we got a
Well,
happy ending.
and like we haven't been using major CFCs and all kinds of different things
Right.
for
Yeah.
a while now.
Imagine that regulation works. Holy shit.
Yeah, tell me about
So so let's jump into The Devil's Climb. Now, this is a movie I definitely watched it in the past like year and a half. But I did not rewatch it. I don't have notes on it. I'm going from memory on it. So why don't you take us through this one? But interesting how it sets up sort of the same way. There's like an A story and a B story. It's like the B story is the A story is Alex and Tommy Caldwell, who we'll come to know in the next film very, very well. Uh,
these are both you know climbing American climbing superstars.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and good friends. Been at it for a long while. Both,
Yes.
been all over the Yosemite scene, the El Cap scene, and you know, very accomplished guys, been multiple magazine covers and
Right.
features and all kinds of stuff.
And in this particular film, Tommy wants to climb the devil's thumb, or is that what they call it? The devil's thumb. And which is a series of like
It's
essentially
three,
three
it's like
climbs.
yeah, it's like three spires
Yes.
basically.
So the the other like part of the side story is that they're going to do a bike packing trip. The reason they're going to do the bike packing trip is because Tommy Caldwell is still um, rehabbing a blown out Achilles tendon. All
Right.
right. Now, he blew out his Achilles tendon and then he tried to climb too soon and blew it out even worse than the first blowout. Had to have surgery, blah, blah, blah. And so part of their trip is he's literally rehabbing on the bike, like as they go. And they bike, I wish I had wrote it down how far it was, but I mean, essentially from the Northern California region to, wherever the climb was.
Yeah,
And
I mean I think they do like, multiple hundreds of miles, like,
yeah, yeah,
couple
yeah.
couple hundred miles or something like that.
So once they once they get there, the plan is to ascend all three climbs in the same day.
Right.
All right. So they do the witches. One's called the witch's hat. One's called the cat's ear, and then the other one is the devil's thumb.
I love it.
And
I love those three names.
yeah,
Also, I
and
love the fact that these guys are, part of why this is a feasible plan is because one of the things that these guys sort of revolutionize is basically like speed ascents.
yes,
Like speed, like whereas it used to take people days on end to climb to the top of El Capitan, these guys would go out and do it in an afternoon. That
now
kind of thing. They just raised the bar so quickly by combining perfect technique with like streamlined equipment and supplies and an emphasis on speed.
and it should be noted that these are regular, like this is regular climbing. They're not free soloing or doing anything crazy. They're doing regular climbs.
Yeah.
However, there's some crazy things that go on in it. So the first the first ascent is pretty like there's not a lot going on. I think it was the easiest out of the three. The second one is basically just a spire that goes straight up. All right, and then it has like 2 points, and so they're wanting to go up to the top of one point, then they come down a little bit and go up to the top of the other one. But then to get to the third climb, they have to descend straight down. They have to rappel down, and that's where it gets like like so crazy for me. So in because you're right, they're trying to go fast. Like there's a time aspect of this movie where it's like we've got to keep moving, we've got to keep moving, we've got to keep moving.
I call it to mind in The Alpinist when he made that first attempt at Torrieger and then realized, you know what, I could do this way faster. Like he got turned around because of that storm, goes back down, is undaunted. He's like, I'm doing it again and I'm doing it. I'm going up, I'm going all the way to the top and back down again in one day. I know how to do it. I've unlocked the puzzle. And he sure enough, he did it. I mean, he was on top of Torrieger at like 9:45 in the morning or something like that. It was absolutely insane.
So he, so they make this ascent, they make it to the top of the cat's ear, and they are going to rappel down, and for the sake of speed they do a tandem rappel where they essentially have one point, one rope, so they
Right.
are counterbalancing each other
Right.
as they go down. And that's crazy. Like I can't even like I just like saying it makes my palms sweaty.
Well, it's basically like your body becomes the safety measure when the other guy falls
Great
because
for the
like
other
when
person.
he falls, you start going up and you don't stop until you get to that fixed point where that rope has gone through if it holds. So like or until he's able to slow himself down, you know, from his fall or something. But chances are if you're falling like you're just going to go until you hit the end of that rope, you know what I mean? So like it's
Ugh.
crazy, but these are two of the best.
Yeah. Now, mind you, now at the top of these climbs, the like when they are standing on these things more or less with no ropes, like it's so crazy. But it's some of the
It's like when
most.
Alex was on top of the tower.
It's some of the most beautiful scenery that you can
Yeah.
ever imagine. Like, they likened it to the Lord of the Rings in the it's at one point where they were like, this is, it feels like something out of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
It's absolutely stunning.
just because once they get to the top and they've got the camera, you can see them like they're showing these crazy angles and in the distance these other mountains and they're above the clouds and it's just so damn beautiful.
There's something also amazing about like when you look at these climbs like the Devil's Thumb, like Torre Egger, where you see them from a distance and they basically look like these fingers of rock that go straight up and down. And there's no possible way that a person could climb up that. Like it's just not possible. Like it's going straight up and down and it's totally smooth. But when you get zoomed in and you see what you're dealing with, it's a it's just a very variegated surface. And these guys are just masters of that. You know what I mean? They can find what they need to get to the tops of these things. They've got safety measures in place so that it allows them the freedom to do whatever it is that it takes to make their way up this giant piece of rock. And it's like if you persevere, you'll do it. Like you can do
Hmm.
it if you could. And if there's something that is so like triumphant for humanity that we have learned that there's no place on this planet that a single human being cannot get to, cannot stand upon, cannot be at, uh, outside of maybe some of the depths of the sea. But it's wild, and yet at the same time, it's really cool how a lot of these things are out there still for the taking, like that no one's ever been to the top of. You
Hmm.
know, you can go up there, and there's still 1,000 first ascents out there waiting for adventurous folk.
Yeah, which is crazy. So
Is there a PCS for alpinists?
I don't know. I'm sure there's something. I'm sure
We're
there's
gonna create
something.
we're gonna create it. PCS for alpinists. That's gonna be our
All right.
our
So that leads us. So that and obviously it's successful and it's quick. That leads us to Tommy Caldwell. So if you're like, and I don't understand how I missed on like knowing who Tommy Caldwell is. Like I knew nothing about Tommy Caldwell before I watched the Don Wall, and
Yeah, I don't think I knew anything about him either. And then
Wow.
right after I watched Dawn Wall, I watched Valley Uprising, which is kind of like the history of big wall climbing in Yosemite, and he was all over that. So was Alex. Um, so yeah, I kind of came to get to know this guy's orbit very quickly, like you did.
So the way that this one starts is with this wild story from Tommy's childhood. And it's like, Tommy was, he was a climber from, he took to climbing early, and da 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 da, and you know he was on the rise to be a climbing superstar. And North Face, or Patagonia, or somebody sponsored a trip for him and three of his climbing friends to go to Kyrgyzstan and climb something there, and they were going to film it and do all this, whatever. And
Wait, but make sure you introduce the other plot line before you get to that. Like that's the big reveal, isn't it? I mean, that's again, I'm going from
no, that's
memory
like
and
the
not my
very
notes.
beginning. So they
They
start
they
out,
open the movie with that
they
part.
want to make an ascent up one side
El
of
Capitan,
El Capitan, which is
a,
called the
per- a
Dawn Wall.
right, a
The reason it's
particular
called the Dawn
pitch.
Wall is because when the sun rises, it's the first place that the sun hits. So they call it the Dawn Wall, because when the sun
Right,
comes up, this is the first part of the
right.
mountain that gets sun.
But the last part of the mountain that you climb, because it's at the very top, and it's like one of the ways up to the top of the thing, and it's vertical.
Yeah, it's very hard, and nobody has done what they are attempting to do. So him and his climbing buddy. Hold on, let me go to my.
Which is the first ascent of like that particular route, right?
Mhm, correct. Oh man, for some reason I don't have the guy that he does it with's name in here. Oh, I feel terrible. Look that
Yeah,
up.
so there's
Look
so
that
there's
up.
a little intrigue about how he comes upon choosing this guy to do this climb with him, right? Get into
Yeah.
that. Refresh my memory on that.
So so they want to make this essentially this first ascent on this line, and the guy that he ends up choosing is a guy that he ends up meeting subsequently after all of this other stuff. So they introduce him as just kind of like one of his really close friends. But what you don't know is like how they came to be friends. And how they came to be friends is then how they introduced the background of Tommy Caldwell.
Yeah, his name is Kevin Jorgensen, by
There
the
you go.
way.
Thank you. So Tommy is this prodigy climber. And like I said, he gets sponsored to take this trip to Kyrgyzstan, where he and his friends are captured by rebels, all right, to the Kyrgyzstan government. And there's four kidnappers, and there's four of them, and they are marched through the countryside, through the mountains.
And doesn't it seem like kind of halfway for ransom, halfway for politics? Like
Yeah,
like
there's definitely like ulterior motives involved. Well, halfway through the 6 days that they're marching them through the mountains, two of the guys peel off to go do something else. They end up getting killed. They never come back. So you're down to two captors, four of them, and at some point, one of them like kind of just gives up and is like, "I'm done with this shit," and rolls out, leaves them with just the one captor. And at this point, they're like going, they're in the mountains. They're kind of hiking, and Caldwell sees a opportunity for him to push the captor off the cliff. And so that's exactly what he does. He pushes his captor off the cliff and kills him. All right. They are
yeah.
then, they hike themselves out, get rescued, and it's a national story. They're on the Today Show. And it's this very, very crazy, scenario that they're in. And so, Tommy's with one of the four people is his girlfriend, and this just strengthens their bond because, all the perilousness of it, and they end up getting married. And at some point, all right, and I can't remember if it had to be before they got divorced. Tommy cuts off the the end of his finger, okay,
Right.
in like a woodworking accident, cuts the tip of his index finger, the most important finger in climbing. He cuts it off down to the big knuckle. All right, and everybody writes him off at this point. They're just like, "You're done. You're never gonna climb again." You know, hang it up. You're done. Well, he ends up teaching himself to climb again and coming back from it. And during that time, his wife ends up falling in love with some other guy. All right, because again, they were kids. They were tied by this weird tragedy and this weird situation, and they grew up and they grew apart. And she fell in love with somebody else and ends up leaving him, and so he's got this big hole in himself of what am I gonna do, like what can I do. And he ends up meeting his buddy, what was his name again? Sorry,
Uh, Kevin Jorgensen.
Kevin Jorgensen. He ends up meeting Kevin, and they have this kinship of climbing. And so they decide that they are going to make this ascent of Yosemite up the Dawn Wall, and that's never been done before. And they're not coming down off the mountain until they do it. So like that's part of this thing. To be able to say that you actually did this, you can't go up and come down and go back up again. They can do
Right.
it in sections. They can go up a section and stop, but they can't
But
come
it's like
down off
one
the
shot.
wall.
It's a one shot deal. Yeah.
Right.
I remember that. Yeah.
So they're living on the wall, all right, this entire time. So in one of those basket, things. So they're like literally hanging off of the wall for
And
like
doesn't it
3 weeks.
doesn't a dynamic start to play out where like Tommy is definitely the stronger of the two? And
Yes. So about halfway up the ascent, there's this spot where you have to make this impossible move. And they're both struggling with it, all right, but Tommy gets it first. All right. And so Tommy gets it, and he's waiting and he's waiting, and it's not happening, and it's not happening. Um
yeah, it was painful. This part of the movie was painful, I recall.
yeah, and it was like not not happen, you know what I mean? It wasn't happening the way that it needed to. And so at some point Tommy starts like continuing on, but coming back to him every day. So he's like he does the next leg, and then the next leg, and then the next leg, and he's getting way far ahead. And you it gets to a point where it's like, at some point he's gonna have to, Kevin's gonna have to give up. And you know they're it's very harrowing, because you're just like, you really want them to do this together, because you don't. Somebody says it at one point. He's like, you don't want to be the guy that didn't make it up,
Hmm.
And so he finally makes this side move, and is able to do it. And then what's crazy is, after he makes that move and he gets that chunk done, the next chunk Tommy was having a hard time with too. And so Tommy went, instead of going like whoop the way that he was supposed to, he went way down, took this descent route, and then climbed back up. So he like went down in this like horseshoe motion. And Kevin didn't. Kevin did it the right way after completing the really hard one. Kevin did the hard thing that
Right,
Tommy
right.
couldn't do. So there's this great moment of triumph after all of this kind of failure. And they end up making it up. And it's this just tremendous story of resilience and pain and perseverance. And it's just like, God, it was so damn good.
Yeah, and it's just shows that like even somebody who is in a way like at the pinnacle of their life and their sport and their achievement, that have become one of the two or three best rock climbers in the world, that are on the covers of magazines and like living their life to to the fullest in the exact way that they want to. Even someone like that can suffer tremendous misfortune, can almost die, can lose friends, can get kidnapped and have their life turned upside down, and then like turn around and go to even greater heights, do even greater achievements, find new ways of expression.
Yeah,
And
and I mean, and Tommy gets remarried and has kids, and then he does the devil's climb with Alex, and so this guy, it's very neat how these guys can have adversity, and they all seem to be able to overcome these tragic moments in their lives, and it's I don't know, it's a testament, man. It's a crazy type of movie to fall into and see all these guys making all these accomplishments. It really is powerful shit.
yeah, so out of them all, if you had to pick one to recommend that people watch, which one would you pick? And I would say this includes Skyscraper Live, this includes Free Solo, The Alpinist, uh, Meru, Wildest Dream,
Oh
um,
God, I mean,
Dawn Wall,
if you're only gonna watch one
Devil's
of all of
Climb,
these
Arctic
movies, you
Descent,
should probably watch
Torn.
Free Solo, and then probably the Dawn Wall is probably my number two. The Dawn Wall was really good, and like I said, and the Torn may have been the best movie out of the bunch, but it's a very different type of movie because it deals with the cost as opposed to the accomplishment. But I would say probably Free Solo and the Dawn Wall and the Alpinist. I mean, those movies, they're like just taking them on their own as like a movies and
Yeah,
like
Alpinist is by far my number one.
separating them out. But it's like if you were only going to watch one, the Alpinist is very tragic. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of there's triumph in it, but it is mostly tragedy, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's certainly an enjoyable and rewarding rabbit hole to go down if you are looking for that type of fare. If you're interested in adventure, the outdoors, climbing, mountaineering, and some very moving and compelling stories, you could do worse. This has been a real joy for me. I've been talking about um, specifically Free Solo, uh, Valley Uprising, and the Dawn Wall, because they are all centered around Yosemite. So they make a nice package of movies to watch together. Um, as I said on last week's show, Free Solo, the scariest movie of 2016 that I watched, or something, of 2017, whenever it came out. Far scarier than any horror movie that came out that year. Free Solo, that will have your heart in your throat for protracted periods of time. But all of these movies are damn good. And also, if you're a fan of just nature photography, because there are just some absolutely
Yes.
stunning shots in each and every one of these movies. Some really good
Well, and you want to
production
talk
values
about,
as well.
it's like we talk a lot on our other podcast about how great the digital photography is for racing and all of that. Go watch the 1998 Everest movie. The photography on it is bananas for a 26-year-old movie, 27-year-old movie. Like,
Yeah,
it's amazing how good it looks, even now.
yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Love all that stuff. This has been a real pleasure. Anything else you wanted to shoehorn into the ep?
No, I am good, man. This one's gonna take a day to recover.
All right. Well, I know that we have not necessarily decided upon what next week's show is going to be, but uh, I would feel very comfortable just saying that I'd be happy to just talk Olympics the entire time because
Yeah.
I want to ingest some Olympic. I already have stuff to talk about from the Olympics that's already happened. So,
Yeah, I watched the
uh,
opening ceremony, so I definitely wouldn't mind that'll give me a reason to watch it.
yeah, so let's chop it up Olympics wise on next week's show.
All right.
Uh, and until then, for you, my brother, I'm Matt. Thanks for listening, and we'll Catch you next time we head out beyond the slipstream. Out here where the air is rare, the views are stunning, and Alex Honnold lives forever. Bye.
Have a good day.
Beyond the Slipstream is a companion to the Team Bus and is produced by Harperama. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Please like, subscribe, leave a review, and tell your friends about us. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time. Ale!